Ladies, gentlemen, are you single, engaged, or married? Then we have something just for you. Join us every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. for Marriage Mentors, hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Mahon, only on Sky 99.5 FM. Let's talk love, intimacy, and just about everything under the sky regarding relationships. Marriage Mentors, every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. only on Sky 99.5 FM.
Love and marriage, love and marriage go together like a heart.
And of course, it's just about 9:02 and a half. Good evening to you, Sky family. Welcome to Marriage Mentors. Good evening, Mrs. Mahon.
Good evening to you.
And how do you do?
I'm doing great.
Are you ready?
I'm always ready for Marriage Mentors.
Yes, born ready, and
I was born ready for Marriage Mentors.
as you said that, very interesting topic. It leads right into the topic for this evening.
Yes. Yes. So in case you would have missed it, the topic that we're discussing this evening is maintaining marriage and ministry. So basically, we're sharing tips and sharing experiences, or just having an open conversation on finding the balance, or if there is an imbalance,
how do you
deal with it? Yeah. And if there's an imbalance, the effects that it would have or could have on your marriage, if it is you don't find the balance between marriage and ministry, because both of them are good and very important, but we must find the balance and maintain good balance.
That's right.
It's actually a continuation from the topic that we would have started. Well, it wasn't really a topic. It was just like a light conversation. We would have started on...
More like frustration.
No, it wasn't. On Monday, and it went on where we were just sharing one side. We were looking at one angle of it, where we were looking at the effects that it has on... if it is as a wife and your husband is called to ministry, then obviously you have to follow, right? You have to follow. And most of the time, it's not that we as wives don't want to follow. It's just about finding the balance and not feeling neglected, not feeling overwhelmed. So you don't want to feel left out. You don't want to feel as though you are there with your husband, or even husbands where their wives
are in ministry.
They have a particular calling and they have to walk in that, and you as the husband would end up being in that same boat. So the things that a wife who is supporting her husband would experience, the same goes for a man, a husband who would be following his wife. And when I say following, in terms of supporting his wife's calling.
In the calling of ministry.
Yeah, because even though he is the head and she's the one that is called, then obviously the two became one. So we would expect you all to support each other. But as I said before, if it is we don't find the balance between the two, then we're going to run into some problems.
Serious problems.
And we don't want to hear God coming down on us and telling us that we're not doing his work, because being married and being in ministry is God's work. It is God's work. It is honoring God. How you treat your spouse is honoring God.
Marriage is your first place of ministry.
It is. So we have to find that balance. Something I was going to say. that came out of Monday. But never mind. During the conversation, I'm sure I'll remember.
Yeah, it might come back up. But one of the things that you were sharing too on Monday was, I think, well, and I'm using the term frustration loosely.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I always had this thought, but I never got to say it or to ventilate
it's
the
like,
concern.
I just needed to say it. I just needed to get it out.
Have to.
Because I'm glad you said that, because there are lots of men
Yeah.
and a lot of women who are, I don't want to use the word afraid.
It's almost like they're suffering in silence.
Yeah, I don't want to go so far to say we are afraid to come out and say anything. I think it's just we don't want our spouses to get offended or feel as though we're not being supportive or we're not being willing to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
And when you're doing stuff for God, you go all out.
That's right. You have to.
Yeah, you go all out. You don't do things halfway. God don't do things halfway with us. So then why should we? You know, and we don't want our spouses to feel like that. Yeah, so even as you said that, it was just from, I just kind of felt the need to go more in depth in the conversation, because I believe that a lot of us, we don't talk about it. And I think too, it's because we don't really have that safe space or place to talk about it, because you know, just fear of being judged or people just misunderstand. People just misunderstand what you're saying, because all they hear is he or she don't want to.
Yeah, or their marriage ain't too good.
Or that's what you're married for, we expect. And you know, we're not supposed to talk like that. We're not supposed to be like that. You know, when someone comes to us, it's because they regard us in a particular way.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to appreciate that and respect them at the same time and listen to what they have to say, because sometimes all they need is 2 ears to hear. Just to hear. Sometimes you don't have to say anything, you know. But just giving them the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
Many times in our marriage, I wouldn't understand something. I would be battling with something in my mind. And from the moment I come and say, hey, babe, you know, so, and I don't understand this. But while talking, sometimes you don't have to say anything. But because it's out, it's like, oh, so hearing it now, it makes sense. Everything is adding up now. Okay, so this is why. Oh, I now understand. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes you don't need a whole lecture from somebody. It's just for someone to listen. To listen to you. And then sometimes, again, you just need to get the right advice from people. Not those who would tell you, well, leave him or leave her. Not those who would tell you,
I don't know,
well, girl ministry is not for you, or boy ministry is not for you. You know, kind of way? Yeah, there's no. If it is you're in a circle and they're telling you those things, change your circle. Change your circle, my friend.
And that's a thing too. Many couples, or one person, part of the couple might be going through it. And they're grappling even with their personality, and that's one of the things we were talking about as well. Grappling with their personality and what they were accustomed to, and making those adjustments, and how quick they're coming, and all of those things.
And like when he's talking about personality, it's just making reference to
The discussion.
what I would have shared on Monday, when, you know, I was saying coming into the marriage, because of how I grew up, even though I was not the only child, I would have acted like the only child, because I used to like my own space, like to be by myself. I spent my years in kindergarten outside the school. And I learned everything. I don't know how. Yeah, but that's a whole story by
By
itself.
itself.
We don't need to share that.
But for the grace of God.
But for the grace of God. Yeah.
Outside the school and on someone's lap.
Yeah. And it's
A
just
teacher's lap. Female teacher's lap. Yeah.
It's
She was
just
close to the teacher. Let me just clarify now so that nobody gets the wrong concept.
so it's just the way that I grew up. And I stepped into marriage, obviously, the same way. And then I realized, oh, so he came from a big family and he loves people. I'm not saying that I don't like people. It's my job to love people. I have no choice because God created me. So we have to love people. But at the end of the day, I think it was challenging because it's like an only child married someone with 1,000 siblings.
Yeah, I don't
you know
have
kind
a
of way. You know that kind of. It felt like that. So it brought on a level of anxiety. It was just frustrating, and it's just because it's not because we had issues with families, and no, we had nothing like that. It was just because I
difference in
needed to
environment.
accept and adjust. That's all I needed to do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's in that adjusting that we learn more about ourselves. We learn because life is not static.
Yeah.
It's not static. So if it is you're the kind of person that you're a loner, you're the loner type, and you have a spouse who is not necessarily that way.
Yeah.
That person is connected, they're more outgoing than you, that kind of thing. Life, that's the first thing we have to consider. Life isn't static.
Yeah.
And as we're on that point, in terms of life not being static, and it's very dynamic and it's full of change and interaction, and we can't be an island for all of our lives.
Yeah.
We need someone at some point.
We
That's
do.
a fact.
We do.
Clear fact. You got married.
And that's something that I forgetting the fact that I needed someone. That's why I got married. I didn't even think about that. But hearing from you in the earlies, sooner or later you'll realize that you need people.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest thing for me. I was like, how could he be so mean? It was bad. It was really bad. I mean, I don't think I would have described it that way inside of the marriage, but inside of my head and my heart, I was fighting my own battles.
It all depends on how attached you are to that personal space.
Yeah.
And that's something couples have to grow through.
I mean, there were times I didn't even want my sister around me. That's all.
And sister?
I'm
Anybody
just
want
teasing
a
her.
sister?
I'm just teasing her because she's here. Yeah. So she herself, I'm sure, if you ask her questions later on, she could tell you she loves her own space as well.
Now, as we would have shared on Monday, I was like that as well. And as a human being, you need times where you have time for yourself. It's part of your human makeup. This is why Jesus himself, he went with his disciples, but it's only so far he went with them. Or let's stay here going by myself. I needed some time alone.
You know, the funny thing with that, as you said, we all need time to ourselves. The opposite happened to me afterwards. I became the opposite person after dealing with the whole issue of wanting to be alone. It's like, if it is you're not around, I mean, if it is we have some kind of argument or something, we need some time to
to cool off.
Yeah. But in terms of, when things good, which is 99% of the time, so I don't get worried.
99.5%.
Don't get worried. Is since then it's like I don't need my personal space anymore.
Yes.
You know, kind of way.
What actually happens there is I become part of your alone time or your
Yeah.
personal space. And yes, couples need that, but you still also need time one
Yeah.
on one, mano on mano, woman on woman. If you could put it that way, especially where you spend that time just to collect your thoughts, just to refocus, just to breathe, so that the spouse that you present to your other half
Yeah.
is a very clear-minded, centered person whose spiritual clarity is good.
Yeah.
And you're not confused. And now, not that you won't have conversation, because that's part of the conversations that you're going to have with your spouse. You know, I was thinking this, and I was just spending time thinking how many of those conversations we have per day. I was just thinking, I was thinking this. And those times where you just
Sometimes I would ask myself, I wonder if he tired of my thinking, boy. I wonder if it is he expecting to hear, but baby, you'll do this and you'll do that and just work. No, it's not
no,
like that.
you need to have those times where you build back yourself, because remember, marriage is that place of serving and ministry, and you
Yeah.
need to have those times where you just kind of recoup. It's not that marriage is this tedious thing, no, that's not what we're saying. In the midst of, or part of the working of yourself is that you time, you
Yeah.
and God time, you time, where you have those moments where you just allow your psychology to heal in that way, because you're still an individual who's married to another individual that is now joined, but you still have that personal self work. If you, well, I'm saying it double, but that personal work or that self work that you
In
need
order
to
to
do
give your best.
best
The best version
in
of yourself.
all of your life. In all of your life, you still have to do all of that. And yes, marriage is your primary place of ministry, but if you are not whole, you can't give your best.
Yeah.
And you need to ensure that you're ministering. That's how you minister to yourself. I'm sure we would have learned in terms of speaking in tongues and stuff like that. It is for the building up or edification of yourself. So just as you would do that spiritually, you need to do that physically. You need to do that psychologically. You need to do that emotionally, where you spend that time to really make sure that your blocks are all together, or else your marbles and your blocks would be scattered, and it will affect the kind of spouse that you are, the kind of worker that you are, the kind of student, maybe mother that you are, the kind of friend that you are. You'll be all scatterbrained
Yeah.
if you're not taking that time to build that aspect of yourself, which is important.
Yeah. Hey, while we're having our conversation, don't forget, this is Marriage Mentors, and we're discussing the topic maintaining marriage and ministry. Yeah, so we're finding the balance between marriage and ministry to save our marriages, right? And if you're not married, then we're preparing you
Yeah.
for marriage and ministry. Yeah, ensuring that we don't step into something that we're not prepared for. Yeah, so call your single friends, call your married friends, call your young friends, call your young at heart friends, call your family, everybody. Tell them Marriage Mentors is on.
And your enemy.
Marriage Mentors is on. And feel free to connect with us via WhatsApp 333-9950. And during the conversation, you can give us a call. And please keep them short so we can get as much calls in. And the numbers to call 624-7729, 624-7729, or 625-2759. Yeah? So we're discussing maintaining marriage and ministry.
Just to ask a question that will allow for persons to relate, because I know your journey can help someone as well in terms of where the call upon the call of God upon my life would have had to stretch you in different ways.
Boy, oh boy.
And I'm sure it's still stretching.
Boy, oh boy.
How's that journey been? Because I know it's not easy, and in many ways I don't always try to come and ask you how it's going, because the more you think about it, remember we were talking about that on Monday as well.
That's what I had to do.
The more
I
you
had to stop thinking.
the more you think about it,
Yeah.
you get locked in the death trap of analysis paralysis, where you're looking at, oh God, and I am not accustomed to this, and and we begin that sense of complaint, that locomotive of complaint that just takes us down a road where we don't even want to grow or change, and we forget the issues of life isn't static. It's
Yeah.
very dynamic, and we're here on a journey of building and growth and maturity. That because just as you're adjusting to the call upon my life, I'm also adjusting to the call upon my life, because yes, there are things up to today. We were doing what we're doing in prep for Saturday, and I'm saying, God, this thing, if I stop and I think about it, this really would be overwhelming. All the planning, and you have to do this, and you have to get this done, and you have to do this, and call this person, and organize this, and everything that you have to do. The more you think about it, and I just said to myself when we were putting stuff in the car, no, Linda, don't think. Just move. Just move.
That's what I had
Just
to do.
move. Just keep swimming, according to Dory. You just have to keep your heart and your mind moving.
Yeah.
Because if you stop to just look at the whole thing, you'll be going crazy.
Yeah.
After it's done, take a look back. So you have a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the task that you were able to complete.
Yeah.
But if you try to do that beforehand, you'll be overwhelmed because you've never been there before. But afterwards, you can always say, because look, when we were doing this particular job for the season recently, we never did it, even though we looked as though we did it before. Something new, but here it is. We were like, we're just going, we're cutting this and building that, and, and we were like, but afterward, it was draining and difficult in the moment.
Yeah.
But we weren't studying how much we had to
No.
do. As the work came, we did it, and we were able to look back till we were able to accomplish way more than was needed. And we were like,
It's
wow.
true. How did we do this?
Exactly. And that in itself, I think God used as a principle for us to work with.
Yeah.
Especially if you're the type of person that you walk ahead in your mind and you're overwhelmed by the amount of work because you're not accustomed to it, to the volume, to that space, that area. It's new to you, and you're trying to work out what has to be done, but you're not really working out what has to be done. You're just working out how you're going to cope with it.
Yeah.
And the more you think about your own coping mechanisms, your brain and your emotions, your psychology gets trapped in this thing, and you just never get to it. And that becomes more of a complaint than activity.
It's like, God, why? But I think for me, I'll start off with what made the journey easier. And when I say easier, it shifted my focus.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. It shifted my focus. Is spending more time with God. Actually listening to Him more, asking Him to speak more, and make me more aware of His voice. Because He's always speaking. He's always. But the question is, are we really listening? And like I was sharing last week, are we really positioning ourselves correctly to hear?
Yeah.
And that's one of the main things that would have helped in the journey, during the journey, and it's still helping.
Yeah.
The more I have an encounter with Him, the more I spend time with him,
Yes.
is the more the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah, my focus has shifted from looking at the mountain, so to speak, and focusing on, hey, like I said before, I must be doing something right.
Yeah.
God help me to continue doing something
Doing
right.
something
because
right.
if it is, you look at it as, wow, this is a privilege.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have to call
Yeah.
any of us. He didn't have to. He didn't have to call you and put me with you. He didn't have to put us together in marriage, nothing like that. But at the end of the day, he chose to do it.
Yeah.
And if it is he chose to do it, then that means we are privileged, we are blessed. And if it is we could sit and count our blessings and say, God, we are grateful that you chose to
Yeah.
call us to this work. Hold us by our hand and help us. Help us along the way. And I said, God, for me, it's overwhelming. It's difficult. I've never been in this before. Never. And I had to be passionate about it for you all to get the
Yeah.
point, right? Because, yeah, I mean, being in ministry, you never know what to expect. Because you're going to meet. Being in ministry is everything that I was totally against. And when I say against, yes, I'm all for doing God's work. But all the details in it, I could sit down and plan stuff for days, weeks, months. It don't matter to me. Basically, when you have to step out, you're out there on the front line now, and you're interacting with people, and you're meeting people from all different walks of life. You don't know how they would respond to you. You don't, and all of this was playing in my mind. Are they going to accept me? Will I be a blessing to people as they expect me to? Am I strong enough? Do I have enough faith? Am I capable to stand with my husband and do what I need to do as a wife? And do I know everything? Do I understand my purpose in this? All those questions, and all the answers are there. But it's just because I wasn't taking the time
Yeah.
to focus on those things. I was like, God, I don't know. But eventually, when I started spending more and more time with him, it just became easier because the focus was shifted. It came off of the mountain being the calling and how big it is to what I'm supposed to do and who I'm supposed to be trusting. Yeah, so that's what made it easier for me.
As you're saying that, I remember, because you said you wanted to give the two perspectives as well, from a husband's perspective
Yes.
and a wife's perspective. And we can also give some biblical support for that as well. I remember when the call of my life shifted or transitioned from one to the next, between 2016, 2017 there. And in the earlier parts, now we knew that God had a plan, especially coming out of the hospital in 2016.
Yeah.
That the fact that I was still alive, God had a plan. And the specifics we had no clue about.
Yeah.
In terms of how it's playing out even now, we had no clue. And the ministry and call upon your life was still active even before we were married.
Yeah.
And in those times when I had to go and support you, we would have gone. And even in the midst of that, I had to deal with those things from a place of yes, you're lending support and you're lending coverage. And even in practice, and I'm saying in practice for marriage because we weren't married yet.
Yeah.
You're preparing to stand as you were if you were married. That you are now giving coverage
Yeah.
now to someone else. And even though we are not married, we weren't married yet at the time, that it helps to fuel even your ministry.
Yeah.
And that's something even this couple would have had to do. Dave and Joyce, Maya, they would have had
Yeah.
to do. The fuel behind her ministry is her husband. Deborah, who was a judge in the Bible, there was one mention of her husband. One mention. She could not have been who she was without her husband. In terms of every woman in ministry, every married woman in ministry, they have good coverage. And yes, sometimes you might find the instance where a woman may not be married but she's in ministry. But there is still coverage. There is still some measure of spiritual coverage.
Yeah.
If you talk to her, yes, there is some measure of spiritual coverage. And if the coverage isn't there, the battles will be greater.
Yeah.
She will be battling
Very
alone.
much so. Very
She'll
much
be
so.
battling alone.
I know about that.
When there is that coverage that happens, it shapes your ministry different.
It does.
It shapes it. And this is why being a woman in ministry and having a husband is not a demeaning thing.
Yeah.
Because God puts technology to keep you safe. To keep you safe, to empower you. It's not about bringing you into slavery and all of those things that people tend to
Yeah.
think about. That submission is a leverage. We remember in school we used to learn about lifting weights and where the fulcrum is positioned and all of those kinds of things. The image of a seesaw.
Good.
We'll bring you back there. We'll bring you back there. That submission is leverage. Leverage, literal leverage. When you're able to correctly submit, it gives you leverage in the spirit.
Yeah.
Because your husband will cover you. He will cover you. He will literally, because I don't know if some wives understand. It's almost the equivalent of a father's blessing on a child. Or God's blessing on you.
Yeah.
That is what happens when you submit. The blessings, when your husband prays on you, prays over your life, that kind of blessing and grace coming from a husband to a wife.
P-R-A-Y-S.
Yeah, P-R-A-Y, not
Yes.
E-Y. That kind of blessing empowers and fuels your life, because the concept of him now giving her resources that she's able to multiply
Yeah.
is a powerful thing. Whether, and especially when she does it in the midst of good coverage and grace, it causes what she does to be amplified.
Yeah.
When you look at Proverbs 31, you remember there's a lot of mention in terms of a husband. None of that would be the same without her husband praising her, without her husband blessing her, without her husband covering her. It's literally, it's almost like a nursery that he's creating over
Yeah.
her life for things to grow and flourish. And that's what actually happens with children, where he creates this covering, this nursery, and she's now tending in the midst of it and causing things to grow. And when we get those images, we see now it's because in order, submission is still like getting to a house, you're literally getting into a house. That's what submission looks
Yeah.
like. He builds the coverage and you get into the house. And this is why it's important for men to build their spiritual life. I always heard when we were younger, Dr. Woodruff used to say, men, never let a woman have to duck under your covering. That's because you're covering too low.
Yeah.
And that stayed with me from since I was young. So that's why too I spend the most time in prayer. When I have to pray, I spend the most time in prayer, so that you have space, spiritual space to run about.
Yeah, boy, when he finished talking to God, I can't go in. That's why I doing it one time.
When
And God say I tired. No, he would say that.
I don't mind. I'm looking forward to the day when God say, "Boy, behave yourself now. I'm fed up of you."
Say, hush,
Hush him out. I'm
Go and
fed
sleep.
up of you praying. I'm fed up. You leave time for somebody else. Fed up of you in my ears. I don't mind that. So that we husbands must create that space for their. It's like you're building a highway for her to literally giving her room. As you do with your children. You want to give them space to run and play. You have to give your wife that kind of space. You build a nice safe space, and that's what submission is. Submission is building within the space that your husband gives.
Yeah.
And husbands think that way. This is why he said, husbands, love your wives.
Yeah.
As Christ loved the church and
yeah.
gave himself for her. And that giving himself for her is creating that space. Jesus created space for us. What space he created? The first thing he did was access to the Father. That was the first thing he did. And then after that, he continued to show us patterns on how to live.
Yeah.
What did he do after that? He died on the cross, which was, again, that whole thing. After that, he sent the Holy Spirit. He said, "I sent another just like me, who will lead you into all truth." He was continually creating space for us. And when you see submission inside of that space, so it's not like that dreary thing where you have this load and you're being imprisoned and you're in shackles and chains. No, submission is a very powerful, empowering thing.
Yeah.
Not well, if you're with the right man. If you're with the right man. But submission is a beautiful thing. So it goes both ways. For men, create space. So that submission is a beauty.
Yeah.
And women, that is an empowering thing. So she shouldn't have to duck. She had to bend down to get into your covering. No, you have to build a space, build a big space. And that space has to be tied to the vision of God on your life. If you're not sure what the vision of God is for your life, it will be small. Get to know the vision of God. Because if it is she has to help you, or she has to have ministry inside of that, you ought to build space for the size of the ministry God put in her.
Yeah.
You have to build space for the size of ministry that God put in her, as well as being very clear on where God is taking you. Because if it is, just imagine Deborah the judge, her husband had to build space for her to be that judge.
Yeah.
Dave Myers had to build space for his wife to be that minister. And you have to think that way. As a husband, you have to think that way. In getting married, you have to build space. It's not just about going to work and bringing home a salary and trying to raise a couple children and say, well, I go there, I do my job. No, your job isn't done yet. It doesn't start yet. You have to be the priest in your home, literally creating space. What did a priest do? He represented the people before God and God to the people. It's a powerful image of representation that he holds. And his job is to always go before the Lord and then come back and represent God before his family. That's what a priest does. He's that point of connection. Just like Jesus is to us, we have to be that to our families as men.
That's true.
So that breakage doesn't happen. That tearing and those kind of pulling and tugging doesn't happen. That you create space. Who's going to ward off the darkness when it comes into your home? You're gonna wait on your wife to call prayer? No, you don't do that. You don't do that. You as the man have to stand up. You as the man have to do those things. So this is why we say to ministry to your marriage is your first place of ministry.
Yeah.
Ministry to your family is your first place of ministry. Before you go and do stuff in the church, in the sanctuary, or going to your community of faith, if you're not completing your ministry at home, you're faulting in your ministry at church. So when we have to think about that world first before we actually get into everything, because what you do in church has to springboard off of what you do at home.
Yeah.
The kind of ministry that you do at home. It has to be. That level of service has to be kind of consistent. It literally shapes what you do in church, how you're able to serve in church, your strength in church. So if your strength is with children, and you God gave you this gift to work with children, and you have children and that kind of thing, that's going to lead into, because you literally can look at this family and say, wait, they have that grace, boy, and they're doing it in church too. Because they're doing it properly at home, and they have effective ministry going on at church, and it flows out. So children could go to your children and see an example, because they've been parented well.
Yeah.
And they have now a greater flow of grace that's going to come out of your impartation when you do children's ministry, because you're seeing it in your children.
Yeah. That's true. That's very true.
So as a man, yes, we know sometimes God might put a call, what might seem as a bigger call on your spouse, on your wife. And it seems like you're just tagging along. It's just because you don't have the correct sight. That you're supposed to be creating a space for her to run. You're supposed to be creating a space for her to run.
Like I said, I don't have the correct sight.
And as a wife, you're not just serving him, you're supporting inside of the big space that God is creating. Remember that dream with the building that we saw with my brother. Whatever that is, it's that space. You have to be building that space. You have to be building that space that is God given, that is God ordained, God planted on your life. And you must be committed to building that thing out to its entirety. We this kind of leaks into what we were talking about some time ago, purpose in marriage. This connects with that so well. So well. And I'm glad we're able to look at it from this angle, simply because many couples tend to end up in a very frustrated place because they're not understanding how it's supposed to go along, how their marriage is supposed to go along. And a lot of the times the enemy now raises up these issues as distractions. And I say issues as distractions to keep your mind from even glimpsing at those things. Whether it be because now when you're not focused on building, he's not focused on building space. He has a lot of time to do all the things that he shouldn't be doing. Whether it be on sites that he shouldn't be, talking to ladies that he shouldn't be talking to, or men in this case, because you know how the world going now. Talking to people that he shouldn't be talking to, and leaking out the grace of God. And she is suffering for coverage. Or on the other side now, where he is not creating spiritual space for her to build in. She is now, her hands are tied, and she's now filled with idle space and time. What happens there? The devil finds work for idle hands. And now she go and get a side guy, and she filling her hands with work. Because she now have a lot of room to fill her hands with. So he doing his own thing, she doing her own thing. And the marriage and purpose that God had for all, you're going down the drain.
And the thing is, these things are real.
Yeah.
It's not just that we making jokes or anything. No, these things are real. We hear about it all the time. We have seen it, and it's easy to fall into that trap, and we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want that for us. We don't want that for you, and we're sure that you wouldn't want that for anybody. So yeah, it's good to understand your purpose, understand your purpose in marriage, your purpose in ministry, understand your calling, understand your role as a supportive wife, understand your role as a supportive husband. Yeah, and let's get God's work done while we're maintaining our marriage. Because as I said before, we honor God with our ministry and we honor God with our marriage. Yeah, and a lot of the times, and I've seen it with ministers. Not all, some, because some really try to balance it. But I've seen some where they put ministry, so all their work in the church and stuff like that, they just put it way above their marriage, and the marriage is just being neglected. And sometimes the wife, let's say the husband is the one with the calling, and the wife is just there suffering in silence.
Yeah.
She's not saying anything, but eventually she will go and do her own thing. And at the end of the day, you can't come and say, will you allow the enemy to get to you? Yeah, she did, but you pushed it. You pushed it. So what are we going to do? Don't wait until that happens.
Yeah.
Don't wait until it happens. Okay, right now your marriage might be going through a rough time because of that, but it's not too late to turn back.
Yeah,
it's
you
not
can
too
still
late
pull
to
it
come
back.
and admit you're wrong. If it is, you did stuff that you wasn't supposed to do. And this is not about going out and having an affair. This is just about putting all that work before your spouse. No, that in itself is wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. Learn to balance it. Come out, apologize. Wives, if it is you do that, come out and apologize. Make this thing work. Make it work, because God ain't gonna be happy. He's not gonna be happy. He said it. He said, I hate divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah, he don't want that. So find ways to balance the two. We'll share some pointers with you as well. As time permits, we have just about an hour and 10 minutes.
We have a question here from Erica. She says, my question is, at what age, Mrs. Adana, you got married at, if you don't mind me asking? But it's like going into a marriage not knowing what to expect from your husband, and then if he's being called into ministry or job that then takes him away from you, getting to know more about both of you. What was that like before you both reached this junction?
Okay, just now, I'm going to take it in parts. The first part was at what age did I get married?
Late
I
20s?
was 20.
28?
Yeah, I was 28. About just a week before 29.
Yeah.
Yeah, because anniversary is just a week before my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could say 28, 29. 29. What was the other question?
The other question was, it's like going into marriage not knowing what to expect from your husband, and then if he is being called into ministry or a job that takes him away from you, getting to know more about you both.
Okay, so she's asking to share my experience with that, or
Yeah.
if it is I experienced that.
Well, because it wasn't that we were taken away immediately as life started with us. We were running more or less together.
Okay, so let me just, as you said that just now, it reminded me of something, and as she mentioned it, well, we do ministry on a Friday, and when I say ministry, we do worship. We are worship leaders as well. So I started doing it by myself before, and it was hard. It was, and when I say it was hard, I know I had the capability because I was a worship leader before we got together and stuff like. I think before.
And so was I.
Before you
We
met
both-
me, yeah.
We both been worship
Before we
leaders
met each
for
other,
years.
and we have been doing it
Yeah,
by ourselves.
Well,
But-
with our teams then.
But started doing it and stuff, and I was like, God, I appreciate the opportunity. I love spending time in your presence with your people. I love leading your people into worship. I love all of that. But I don't like doing it alone. that was
So
my
it was your fault.
that was my private conversations, yeah.
That was your fault.
And Erica, God is so good.
He's so
God
good.
changed around a lot of things, especially with where we work and stuff, and he created the room for us to do it together.
Is you.
Yeah,
Is you.
he created the room for us to do it together. So I couldn't be more than happy right now. I'm grateful.
Is you.
I'm grateful, and it's so not that it wasn't powerful when I wasn't doing it, because when God moving, he moving. It's not about me. But you see, when the two come together, God is. Sometimes I say, God, you just show off, You just show off. The only time he wasn't showing off when I alone was, and then like the people got so accustomed now to us. So if it is I go alone, it will be very weird. Just like how leaders neglect me when leaders not here. Yeah. So when I'm doing these segments, I have to be begging all to message and contribute and stuff like that. No, I don't have to do that. So it's awesome. It's different. There's really a difference in the way God pours out his anointing and his grace when the both of us come together and we come together as one doing his work. So yeah, to just respond to your message, Erica, yeah, that was just a testimony of how God worked. Yeah, how he worked it out in our favor.
Yes.
Did she say anything else that I did not respond to?
She said, thank you for your response. It's like hearing you. It's like you still have butterflies from growing together by God's love.
Well, yeah.
We do. And that's the thing. That's the thing. We, from the earlies to we spend a lot of time praying together. More than the call upon our life.
On the phone.
Yeah.
Used to do it on the
We
phone.
used to do it on the phone, even before we were married and stuff like that. On a morning, send prayer, just early in the morning. I'm on
Like
the
I told
road.
him, I say, when you were dating me, you would have sent nice prayer in voice notes,
Voice notes, yeah.
And now I don't get it. He says, so what you want me to do? Get up next day and say, let me send it.
Let me send a voice note.
All you know me, I would still appreciate that.
If I get up and I send a voice note, I'll have to leave the room, or else she'll get up. I'll have to go in somewhere in the house and go and send a voice note, so when she gets up, she'll hear the voice note with me praying and stuff like that. So before we were married, every morning I would have done that. So I was on the road by 5 o'clock or something like that, and I'm spending time in my personal time in prayer and stuff like that. I say, all right, let me send her a message, just speaking and declaring over her day and all of those kinds of things.
It was so nice.
To wake up and see
It was
in your
so-
phone a voice note. Probably
Because I was sleeping all that time. I used to tell him to wake me up because there was a period where I was working and then I wasn't working. Yes, so during the time that I was working, he used to be my alarm clock. So I I was at work on time every time.
So yeah, those are things as I think that's one of the most underrated things that is important for couples. You see that spending time in prayer, praying for one another. I can't express how important it is. Praying for one another, praying with one another, and letting your spouse hear you pray. It is important. It is important. It may seem very insignificant, but it's louder in the spirit than you think. It has more effect, it adds more power, if you could put it that way. It raises the voltage of your marriage, to keep away the darkness, to keep away the enemy. Water your marriage with prayer. You know, me say, if a wife is crying or wants attention from her husband, but he seems like he doesn't even care about anything, what can she do? Well, two things. If she's crying or she wants attention, communicate it. That's the first thing. Communicate.
You know, when we were small and we were just whining and stuff like that, they would say, use your words. Use your words.
Use your words.
Yes.
Even if your words not working, you can't find the words. One of the things I would highly recommend is write a love letter. Not an argument letter or cuss out letter or anything like that. A letter of love. You expressing your thoughts and your feelings to your husband, and put it with his lunch or where he would see it. Do it nicely.
I think I need to start back writing notes for you when I do your breakfast. I'll just put it under the plate.
Under the plate, and I mightn't see it.
No, it'll be sticking out
Or
there.
sticking out on the side.
Like a napkin.
Well, girl, I stopped getting those things. And when I say I stopped getting those things, it's because the arrangement of life different now.
Yeah. And it's not that we're too busy to do it.
To do it, no, it's just that life
we just
different.
say it out now instead of writing.
Yeah. Like before, like if I am getting ready for work and she's preparing breakfast and everything for me to get to work, she'll put the note. So when I'm having breakfast on the way to work, I'll see it.
But then it had stopped because I was coming together with him to
Together.
work.
So how are you gonna write a letter when we just there together in the car working? We're going together. It's like, okay, I'll write this letter. So how are we gonna see it? Or I might have breakfast in work, and I'll get to sit in the lunchroom and read it while I'm having my breakfast. Message on the phone, eh? She said message on the phone.
Yeah, this generation is
you all
different.
can message on the phone. But I'm telling you, old ways goes a long way. Writing it out, the mere fact that you're getting to see your handwriting, yeah, that's a big seller. A big seller. Use your finger and write on that piece of paper. Because I started saving up all the notes in the car. All these napkins with notes in the car.
Until there was a time, he said, "Baby, I think the note fly out, I don't know where the note is. I was so upset, eh? It's like, but I could have simply just write it over. But I was just so upset because I just wanted you to keep that particular note, that piece of paper. That writing, everything.
So I'm there piling up all these napkins with notes on it. Because I think you still have the first one. Well, it wasn't a note. Well, it was a little note on a gift.
To the one I love.
To the one I love from the one who loves you. XOXO.
Yeah. I still have it. That was a box of chocolates. So I would have turned the box, the empty box, into a Q-tip holder, and I would have removed the tag from on it where he wrote the message, and I put it away somewhere. I have
I
it.
think it's still. I think I saw.
And then there was
sometime
another card that you would have made out of paper, and you wrote a nice
a story,
note. Yeah,
and the children drew some
yeah.
some
I still
butterflies
have
and
it.
animals and stuff
I
like
still
that.
have it.
So those are things that you still want to involve. Naomi, I commend you. You're creative like that. And those are things I think we tend to throw out the window. And husbands, if your wife do that for you, or wives, if your husband do that for you, don't say like some people, this trippiness. Don't say them kind of
No.
thing. You
Please don't.
And then you're saying, I don't know what's going on. It's you. It's you. The man or the woman going and take the time and do this thing, and you come and say, well, this trippiness, I don't want this. You see, you should stay by yourself. It ain't hotting up the person's head. Erica said I was still supposed to send the voice notes.
Yes, I'm still waiting for it.
Don't worry, you'll get voice notes. I was still sending voice notes, but those morning voice notes. Thank you so much, Mickey. Appreciate it.
Oh,
Daddy's asking if we have a scrapbook for publication.
no.
Interestingly enough, we could probably compile it.
We could.
But those are simple things that you want to still value. It's like the bedtime devotion last night and
Yeah.
the one that you would have shared the night before, because they were tying in so well. The basic things.
Remember the basics. Yeah.
And you don't want to get so advanced in technology and in life that you forget the basic things.
Yeah.
A love letter still goes a long way.
It does.
When you write, you could send a message, but a message, handwriting communicates so much more. For me, who study handwriting styles, emotion is actually inscribed in how you write. How you feel is actually in the way that you write, how you curve your letters and everything. Your emotional roller coaster while you're writing actually comes out in your lettering, how you craft your letters. So those are things you now, someone who is reading it may not fully understand, but they will get some sense of what's being written or how you feel more than just the words. But they will actually communicate. You've ever gotten a message and you've seen or you felt the aggression in the way that they type.
Especially when it's about caps.
Even before we learned that caps was shouting. Now some people don't know that when you type all in caps, it's like you're bawling behind the person. I said, yada. So you kind of read it like that. But you can actually, or even before you get a phone call, you get a sense that this person upset. I don't know if that has ever happened to you. And when you pick up the phone, you know that they're upset. And it's like, oh, I know that, boy. Emotion is actually communicated in how we, long before we actually hear the words, we get a sense of where this is going. Some people like to call it all kind of different names and stuff like that, but it's hidden technology that God builds into life. I'm not going and try to make no big set of thing. It's God do it. But the fact is, when you write, you communicate emotion as well. So yeah, use a little piece of pen and a piece of paper and a pen. Write to your spouse. Tell them how much you love them, how much you value them, and stuff like that. And just communicate. Yes, the difficult things that you're finding hard to say with your mouth. Write it out. Read it over before you send it. Read it. Make sure and read it over. Because you might say something that you shouldn't say. And when you read it over, you're actually able to connect and collect your thoughts in a way that doesn't bruise the reader. Yeah? So safeguard yourself.
Yeah.
Share some love on a piece of paper. Denise, good evening to you. She said she just came home. Welcome. Welcome.
Hey, so Denise, in case you do not know, we're discussing the topic maintaining or just simply finding the balance between ministry and marriage. Yeah, so we're about to share some tips, so we encourage you to continue sending in your WhatsApp messages. Get in on the conversation. You can send your messages to 333-9950, or the lines are still open, so you can give us a call at any point in time. Well, anytime before 11, because at 11 p.m. is where we wrap up. So, yeah, you can give us a call. Keep all your contributions as short as possible and straight to the point, so we can continue with the conversation. Yeah. So just want to touch on some pointers with all of us listening: men, women, single, engaged, married. Yeah. So the first one is make expectations crystal clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, make your expectations crystal clear. So again, that word communication comes in. So let's say, all right, you're married, your communication level and there. Yeah. But now your husband or husbands, your wife was called to ministry. Now, more than ever, you need to communicate. You need to communicate and share your expectations with each other, so you all can find that balance. Be clear. Don't hide anything. Put it all out there on the table. Have an open discussion. Talk about everything, so that when you all do get into this, to go on this journey together, everybody on the same page. Because one can be going one way and the next one going the next way and expect the marriage to work. They're not going to work.
If you can't be like us and talk about these things before you all get married, even better. Because you want to kind of get a sense. You may not have all the details down pat. Because we were talking about marriage ministry before we got married.
Yeah.
Here we are. Here we are. Because I knew that was a call from the Lord. And we had to be conscious of how we built, so that we know what works and what does not.
Oh, they think I expected to be on radio talking to people about marriage? Or they think I expected to be sharing for devotions? What? I didn't know anything about that. But after a while, God just pour out.
Here you are.
I was like, God, here I am. Pour out everything.
Moments later.
Pour out everything. I'm here. I'm ready. And as long as you avail yourself to God, He will help. Because why? He calls you to a purpose, and He expects you to walk in that purpose, and He's holding you by your hand and guiding you along the way. Right? If it is you want His leading, you want His direction, you want it to work, you'll obey.
And that's the thing, yeah. We always say it. as nice religious cliches. Whatever God orders, He pays for. But those things are true. If He places a call upon your life, He will fund it. And when I say fund it, He will provide the resources for it. A lot of the times, especially when it comes to those emotional and psychological things based on our comfort zones, we don't see how He gives the resources. We're not readily able to see how He gives the resources.
Yeah.
And that's because the whole issue of complaint and our preference to analyze and want to know where it's going long before it starts.
Yeah.
But looking back now, we can both say, yes, God did resource us, or else we wouldn't be here. Or we wouldn't have anything to say or share if He didn't equip us for now.
You all would have been getting repeats.
Or if any at all, if it started at all.
Exactly.
And that is the thing. If you are sure that God calls you into some measure of direction or ministry, if you could put it that way, as a married couple, sit, discuss it together. And it doesn't matter how late, how far, of course, you would have gone. You can still bring things back, because you have life. Purpose is still there.
Yeah.
If it is you're not the kind of person to want to get those things in order, then we don't know what God will do with you. We don't know what God will do with you. But He's supposed to, He's willing. The mere fact that He called you.
Yeah.
He called you both. Men, remember, your duty is to provide covering and space for your wife to build. If you're not doing that, you are restricting. It's almost like you ever put a rubber band tight on your finger
Yeah, I did that yesterday.
and cut off the circulation?
The thing started to swell. I was like, Lord, I'll go there.
So you begin to get numbness and weird feelings, and because you're cutting off the supply.
Yeah.
So when husbands don't stand as a priest correctly in his home, he's literally doing that to his wife and to his family, because he's not creating space. You're literally restricting the flow. You're being more of a python to your family than anything else. You're squeezing their necks. You're squeezing purpose, restricting the flow of the grace of God upon their life if you're not standing as a man correctly. And wives as well, if you're not standing and operating within that space, if you have this space or you're not submitting in the space, then you're also stopping the flow from getting to the rest of your family. So everybody has to be positioned correctly, as we talked about. If the men are positioned correctly, the women are positioned correctly, the children inside of that environment will be shaped correctly, or given the tools to be shaped correctly. So you want to make sure everybody standing in the right place, husbands, wives, so that you can raise children in the fear of the Lord.
That's true.
So those are things that you want to kind of look at and make sure you have in order, all your ducks in a row. Men have a responsibility, women have a responsibility. If she has a call on her life, and when I say a call to some external form of ministry, it's not that she now neglects her ministry at home, because the ministry, external ministry, springboards off of what she does at home. And the space that you now give her as a husband to run. So it's not that, well, I have this calling upon my life, I don't have time for these things here. No, you'll screw things up. You'll screw things up. You still have to ensure that that you have proper covering, that there is that that submission, that you are taking care of things at home. Because if you go out and you're doing women's ministry and your children willy all over the place, if they use those terms, then you're literally rendering your ministry externally null and void. No woman ain't getting ministered to. You could come up with all the nice slogans and
If your house
and
is
rhymes.
not in order,
Yeah. Come up with all kind of nice slogans and rhymes. It will be of no effect. People will have notes, full up their notebooks with notes, man. Write down every word you say verbatim, and nothing from it change or impact anybody. Ministry without impartation is nothing. Just like faith without works is dead. If you're not, faith is that impartation that transfers when you minister, when you go and you talk. If there's no impartation, nothing happens. All you did was waste people's time. You want to ensure that there is impartation taking place whenever you go to minister. Other than that, it's just an academic experience.
yeah.
And the Spirit of God moves with impartation from a correct life transfers. That life transfers is impartation, and the Spirit of God works with that. If your life isn't right when you go and you do ministry, there is no impartation, and you give the Holy Spirit no space to work with. Yeah. So that is why we make sure we have things working at home properly,
Yeah.
so that when we go to minister, there's greater impact. We're not just saying, Lord, you do what you have to do, and we just messed up and doing all kind of craziness, living anyhow and feel we could go and minister.
Yeah.
This is why many things are of no effect these days. When we pray, nothing happening. When we prophesy, nothing we prophesying, and all of those kinds of things tend to happen because we are not doing things correctly. Yeah, we literally watering down everything, and God isn't glorified properly.
Yeah.
Lord, you get all the glory. All my hallelujahs belong to you. No, there's no hallelujah home. There's no hallelujah in the marriage. But you're going to lift hallelujahs in church. No, you had to have plenty hallelujahs home.
That's true.
You had to, that is where the hallelujahs mean the most. Not just when you go and you could dress up nice and look all nice and dandy before every pastor and the leadership team and all your fellow church members. No, that's not where it matters most. It matters most behind closed doors.
Yeah.
With your spouse, with your children. When there is that sense of that they could still look at you and see God inside of you, working on the inside of you. When your children and your wife or your husband could look and see, God really operating in you. That your sense of spiritual grounding and communication, those lines of communication is still working on the inside of you. And they know when you lift your hands in church, it's because you've been doing it at home. That you bring God with you in church. That amplifies the whole atmosphere in the corporate setting because you've been doing it at home. And your children know that they're doing it. They're encouraged to do it as well. Even as we were looking at last night's bedtime devotion with the conversation between the minister and his daughter. Those kinds of things, that transfer of faith by practice, your children, they're able to have now because they're seeing you doing it. It's not that you're faking it and they know, well, mommy or daddy not faking it. They one way home. They're like animals home. Fighting is a war zone when they're home. And when they go in church, like angels. You can't have that. Or else you're poking loopholes and creating a hypocrite in your child because you're already doing that in your own life. So
That's
the
right.
child growing up knowing, well, that's how it is. Because it's one way home and there's there's another way in church. I guess that is how it goes.
Yeah.
You could be looking holy in church and willy home. But holiness had to be home too.
Yeah.
Or if not, devil take behind most. When the enemy comes home, and then you're going back by pastor to pray. Pastor, pray for me. This happening home. This happening.
You created the mess already.
That's the thing. That's the thing. That is the thing. Why do we have more persons coming and asking for prayer, not growing in maturity and able to pray at home and drive. When spirits come to your house, you have to be able to tell them, not here, not here. Find somewhere else. Pass, don't even pass over, pass around. And then after you do that, you take authority over your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Not this neighborhood. Go from here. Are we driving out the enemies that are coming into our homes and in our neighborhoods? Are we standing as priests and representing? Husbands, that's your role, you know.
Yeah.
Wives, that's your role. When all they stand together and pray, or individually, you're literally doing those things. So no spirit can't just come and jump on your child just so. Why? Because they know they have to contend with this battle axe in his spirit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of that is part of it. Next point.
So we would have just covered the point. Make your expectations crystal clear.
Yes.
And this next point is really a big one as well. This one is learn to say no. Learn to say no without feeling guilty. Learn to say no without feeling guilty. And I'll tie it in with another one of the points, which is practice rest. Yes, so you're learning to say no without feeling guilty, and you're practicing rest at the same time, because then you're going to end up overworked, so you can't perform in your marriage, your ministry going to be done halfway, everything is going to be crazy and out of place. That can't work. That cannot work. Your marriage will not survive. Your ministry will not be able to stand when it has a foundation like that is cracking up. No, that's not going to work.
Oh God, you just really, that's a big point in truth. Because when you said it, the question came to mind: say no to who? And say no to what? Not every time or every opportunity that you get to do something in church, you have to do it. Especially as a married person. And young people, yes, you want to feel a part and don't want to feel like you're missing out on anything. But again, everything that is done in the kingdom of God has to be commissioned by God.
Yeah.
He said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it.
Yeah.
No matter how much you build, it doesn't validate that it is God's building. Or let me put it this way: no matter how much activity you do says that it is God building. It is only God's building when we act on his leading.
Yeah.
That's the only time. Other than that, it's just you.
That's true.
All on you. So the next thing is, God is not invested in burnout. He'll never burn you out.
Never.
This is why he said, he instituted from when he started creation, work this amount of time and rest this amount of time. There are always go seasons.
If he rested
and rest
and
seasons.
he created us.
So we know God is not interested in you burning out. There are sometimes you say no. Not every time pastor call, you have to answer. Because yes, pastors are normal men too, and they get excited. Many of them get very excited. They have an idea and they want to do this and they want to do that. Did God say? Next thing is, am I supposed to be involved in this? Not everything in having in church you have to be involved in. Not everything. Don't let nobody work up, play on your guilt and all that them kind of thing to make you feel as though you have to be in everything. Hear from the Lord, please. Because who's going to get burned out? You will get burned out. And at the end of the day, you're going and complain to God, and God is saying very quietly, I never sent you.
Exactly.
I never sent you. And you're there thinking of, but God, I doing this and I go doing that and I doing the other. I was here and I paying my tithes. All the validation as to why this shouldn't happen, why you were absent for your marriage and why you were absent for your children, because you was doing this for the Lord, and I put that in inverted commas. And at the end of the day, God never sent you. He never sent you. And those are things I've seen many marriages fall apart. Why? Because somebody was in church doing something God never said. At the end of
You're
it,
spending more time
there.
than with your family. So the children don't have a mother or a father, the father figure in their life to say, well, okay, I'm seeing daddy doing this way, I'm seeing mommy doing this. You know what you're going to hear? Well, mommy or daddy never home. Yeah, they're never home, so they're doing what they want.
Balancing marriage and ministry is something you... And balance doesn't mean you give half here, half there, you know. Balance is doing it as God said to do it. Sometimes balance might be 80-20 or 90-10.
And this is not about taking your spouse along with you and having he or she in the church with you 24 hours and
No, that's not what that means either.
You could do the work, yes, but spend time together. Take a little run away, do something.
Make sure that you all are resting in between, because it's God's work. He said he will build his church. And you know, many a times people ego is getting in the way. And yes, this is my church and my church. I have seen some catastrophic things happen when that get to some people's head. That is a very dangerous thing. We have to remember, yes, he gave us that to work with, but you don't hold it too tight. Just like any ministry, you look in the Bible, anybody who thought that it was all about them, if they didn't want to let it go, they might get a hand chop off, and lose it the same way. No. It is God's work, and we are here to partner with him. But we partner with him on his terms, on his conditions. When he says stop, we stop. We don't try to do things that God never tell us to do. Remember, this is something we've been called into. It didn't start with us. So sometimes people may say, well, I start this ministry and I'm this and I... No. Deflate your head. Deflate your emotions. Step back. Some things you just have to say no to. God never called you to that. Everything you want to be in. This happening over so, that happening over so. I remember Anderson was saying that recently. That there's some things he's invited to and stuff like that. And no, he wouldn't go. And that's the thing. It takes a measure of maturity and restraint to not be involved in everything. And what that also takes is hearing God. Because not everything is called ministry. It's ministry that you've been called to.
Yeah.
There's some things that God called you to do, and there's some things that God never called you to do. And you have to know the difference. Because that's what's going to give you marks before the Lord. Not this is ministry, so I all for it. If God didn't tell you go, don't go. Don't go. Leave it alone. Say no. Respectfully, I'll decline. I'll sit out this one. I had to do that sometimes.
Yeah,
I'll sit out this one. I'll sit out. I had to tell my pastor that no, I'll sit this one out. Why? You don't need to know why. I'll sit this one out. Fine. Full stop. We don't need to go into argument about, well, this is the Lord's work. Okay, God tell you do it, you do it. I'll sit this respectfully. I'll sit this one out. Because at the end of the day, God might be saying, you're seeing things happening in your marriage and this thing come up in church and you're getting pressure and pressure and pressure. Why are you not coming out and you're not here for this meeting and that? No,
and I've seen that.
People marriage going down the drain, a family falling apart, but they're in church.
Because I've seen this particular couple but the wife is heavily involved in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say it, is always there for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and like she would split herself up just to give each person a portion of herself, and try to balance all of that with ministry in church as well. And I used to ask myself, how your marriage working? Your marriage working out? And then when you listen to the story, because the husband,
Mm-hmm.
he was kind of like on the outskirts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just trying to get back closer to God and stuff like that. So she would have been the one there and trying to encourage and stuff like that. But he would have seen her being burnt. But at the same time, he's still trying to support and stuff like that. But I was seeing that it was hard on him. And certain things came up where
Mm-hmm.
his health was at stake, and then she started getting pressure from the church,
To keep coming, and she's not
Be-
supporting her husband.
and then sadly he passed away.
Oh my.
And she still had to be, up to this day she's still working, and I am saying you need to rest, because at the end of the day, if it is you are the one who is trying to keep everything together in the church,
Mm-hmm.
when you're not there, everything collapses. Something is wrong. Something is wrong, and you're not the pastor.
That
Something is
person-
wrong.
That person building their own church. It isn't God's church. there is what we think is ministry, and then what God says is ministry. And those are the things. What God says is what we have to give priority
Yeah.
to. What God says is what we have to give priority to. If we're not doing that, a lot of the times we end up burnt out. We do things that God never tell us to do.
Yeah.
Never, never. He never sanctioned from his throne. And sometimes it's just a good idea somebody had, and we decide to run with it.
You're just
Let's
excited,
do this.
yeah.
Let's do this. And we raising funds, and we doing this,
And then when it collapsed now, you say it's the devil and the devil. No, God didn't tell you to do it in the first place.
those are things we have to make sure we sort out. And those things can only be sorted out as families get it right.
Yeah.
It's not going to be, don't wait for it to sort out on a church level, you know. You, in your home and in your family, have to sort those things out. Even pastors, sort it out in your home. And then the rest of the church will get it correct. And based on what you learn and how you teach it, yes, they will get it correct.
That's true.
But if you're not the pastor, you have a responsibility to get it right. You have a responsibility first to what God called you to. You have a wife, you have children. Take care of those things first. First.
That's right.
First. Yeah, you might have been going to that church for how much years, and it seemed no, from the time you go and you get married, your priorities are reorganized. God literally take your priorities and reshuffle them. So you want to ensure that you work with his lineup of priorities.
Yeah.
If not, trouble. Let me know when you're ready.
Just need a few.
All right. So those are things you want to ensure that you're working out. You're working out. It is okay to say no sometimes.
That's right.
You feeling physically burnt out and you have no space to even spend time in prayer. I've seen that too. I've been there. There. You're in church all the time and you feeling spiritually dry because you are spending time with God. You're in every corporate meeting. You're in all kind of prayer meeting. All here. Not because you're in church prayer meeting. That says everything right with you and God, eh? You still need to spend time alone with God. He has to know you personally. He has to know you personally. So at the end of it, if it is you're in church, for every time the door open and they have something happening, you there. make sure what is happening more than even that is that you are spending time with God, and that you have a family, you are building correctly with your family. Those things are important. Singrid, good evening to you. She says hi, good night. She said she knows someone like that. When he go to church, his hands up in the air. When he reach home, he's the devil himself. Oh, my Grace, good evening to you. She says good night. Loving this topic. There's so many things that we have to really get in order as a church, as God's children. We have to make sure that we're on point with those things. Because what's at stake is that we claim that we're working for God. And a lot of the times, that is not the case. That is not the case. Because some things are done in the flesh. And we have to be, this is why the Bible says test the spirits. This is why the Bible says use discernment. This is why the Bible says you shall hear a voice behind you saying this is the way walk in it. Mm-hmm. And this is the way walk in it will say no sometimes. No, don't do that. How many times have we heard no? Are we hearing no? Are we hearing no? Or we just going with whatever we feel? Make sure that you could hear no and you could hear yes. And if no is no, no is no.
Yeah.
And if yes is yes, yes is yes. That means if he says yes, you go ahead. If he says no, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. Yeah. So it's now time for marriage devotional.
Yes. It's now time for your marriage devotion inside of Marriage Mentors with Mr. and Mrs. Mahon. And this evening we're looking at no man or woman is a failure who has helped hold a home happily together. He who has been victorious in his home can never be completely defeated. Now, a minister once shared with a congregation, may I share with you some reasons why I believe? All good reasons. None of them the really real reason. There's my family. I believe because I was brought up in a believing family. I don't make any bones about that. I don't know what would have happened to me if I had been born of a Chinese family. I just don't know. I do know that I was led to believe in the love of God as soon as I learned I should eat my oatmeal. We did a lot of believing in our house. We didn't have much else to do. As a matter of fact, other kids sang, Jesus loves me, this I know, because the Bible tells me so. I sang, Jesus loves me, this I know, because my ma told me so. I wasn't alone. You probably heard about a reporter asking the great German theologian Karl Barth toward the end of his career, Sir, you've written these great volumes about God, great learned terms about all the difficult problems of God. How do you know they're all true? And the great theologian smiled and said, because my mother said so. Families are God's primary missionary society. Mm-hmm. And Psalm 127 and verse 5 says, blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Mm-hmm. They shall not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. And once again, no man or woman is a failure who has helped hold a home happily together. He who has been victorious in his home can never be completely defeated. And that was your marriage devotion inside Marriage Mentors for this evening.
Very good one. Very, very good one. So we see that the importance that the home has. Mm-hmm. in the entire scheme of things. It's easy to focus on everything else.
Yeah.
We were talking with a friend last week about similarly how home's supposed to be built. You have to be thinking home should not be a war zone.
Yeah.
Home's supposed to be a place where you rest. You shouldn't have to be coming home to fight.
Yeah.
And sadly, that's the case with some people. If that is the situation, work hard at turning it around. No amount of work you do outside will fix that. Let me say that again. No amount of work that you do outside will fix that. Where you put your effort is where you'll see the results.
Yeah.
If you put your efforts in work, you work hard to getting a better job, depending on where you work, you should see the results.
Yeah.
You work hard in church, you would see the results there, because you'll get more responsibilities. You might get some recognition. If the church hire you on staff, you'll get some money, but you would still have the war zone at home. Yeah. Where you invest that time is where you'll see the results. So I want to encourage you, if that is the case, invest the time. I've been seeing too many families falling apart because of that neglect.
Yeah.
And many a times they say, I don't know, they turn around and say, I don't know how this happened, how this get here. I don't know why this so, and it's easy to throw the blame on someone else. I think in one of the sessions we would have looked at what have you contributed to getting there. And you have to think about that. Work with your family, work with your spouse. Wives, work with your husbands. Husbands, work with your wives to turn things around. Because what you will hear will always big people. Always fix it. Your pastor will tell you that.
Yeah.
Always big people. I don't know what else to tell Ole again. Ole ain't coming to church, Ole ain't praying. That never fix a marriage yet. Do it home. Do it home. Make sure you're working it out home. Because there's things you cannot go and say in church when you're lifting up your hands. How you will go and tell the man, well, we don't have sex anymore. You will tell him that in church? No, those are things to say home.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm saying it's important to have that conversation home, to deal with those issues home. You'll tell the woman in church, well, you always have on a set of clothes, you're no longer attractive anymore. You're there going to bed like Batman or Batwoman. you're there like you're wearing all the curtains in the house. You can't say those things, even though you shouldn't say that. But even if you're having an open conversation about as to why things are falling apart in your marriage, you can't have those conversations in church.
Yeah.
So, pastor saying, well, it's because all you're not in church, not equating to fixing the issue. No amount of prayer meetings you attend in church will fix that marriage problem at home.
Yeah.
No amount of him laying his hands on your head and greasing it up with olive oil is going to fix it. Let's be very practical. Where you put the investment, it's where it's going to work. And we thinking that this is how it's going to work. We got to keep doing it. If I go here, it will fix that home. No, that's not how it works. That isn't how it works. So we have to make sure that we're putting priority where priority should be.
You know, as you're on that point, it brings me to, well, it should be the final points because we only have just about 15 minutes or 14 and a half minutes. The final point for this evening is remember why you got married.
Yeah.
Which is to glorify God.
That's right.
That again, remember why you got married, which is to glorify God. So your actions, your words, how you treat with the home, the children, the marriage, everything supposed to glorify God. Everything,
Very
how
true.
you speak to your spouse, supposed to glorify God. Um, Behind closed doors and in public. Yeah, let what you do in public be the same thing that you do in home. Don't let it be two different people. I always say that. Don't let it be two
Exactly.
different persons. We meeting. One on the outside, one on the inside. No.
One of just to share our experience, one of the biggest journeys we've been on is learning how to speak to each other. Yeah, and how not to take offense for everything. That's one of the biggest journeys we've been on since we got married. Well, even before, but to this point, yes. How to, one, not take offense to everything, and two, how we manage our speech with each other. And you have to say stuff lovingly. And when I say lovingly, not for the purpose of just saying it because you just want to get it off your chest,
Yeah.
because you feel like you're entitled to say it. And a lot of the times we end up saying things because we vex. And I just want to say it because you need to hear it. And those are things could damage your marriage. Yeah.
True.
So you want to make sure that you're watching the way that you're saying the difficult things. Have the conversation. Yes. What was the final point that you just shared there?
Remember the reason why you got married, which is to glorify God.
And you glorify God with your speech. You glorify God with your speech. You honor God by honoring your spouse. Everything that you do is worth doing well. I grew up hearing that. Everything that you do is worth doing well. And marriage is about honoring each other before the Lord. Right? One man didn't enter the promised land. The two guys didn't enter the promised land because they didn't honor God before people. Right? And a lot of the times we dishonor the Lord before people, even in our marriage.
Yeah.
Right? We're not honoring each other. It dishonors God. And God don't take lightly to those things. That's what happened. That's why Moses and Aaron did not enter the promised land. They saw it, just like with Elisha, how he told the security, you will see it, but you wouldn't eat of it. Same thing happened with Moses and Aaron. They saw the promised land, but they died before they even got there. And those are things you don't want to find yourself guilty of. When we see those lessons pop up, you want to ensure, I say it like this in our conversations and when we're counseling, make sure that your regard for your spouse isn't deteriorating.
Yeah.
If it deteriorates, is a big sign that something is off. And we lose those things. We go beyond the regard drop. Now it falls into utter disregard. And you're saying all kind of things. Attitudes change. And you all don't even know that you're acting like you all hate each other. And before you know it, all you're married because of wedding bands and now it's polymer. Your marriage certificate is made of polymer now. If you have that and you have the normal, like the long sheet with the lines on it, like what you sign for the registry, a lot of the times that's all your marriage is. It's just piece of paper.
True.
And there is no action and reality to it. Beyond all of that, it's a covenant that you took before God. Honor God with your marriage. Honor God with your marriage. Many of us could fall into dishonorable marriages simply because we are not taking the time to build it correctly. We're cussing out each other. It's a war zone. It's a fight. It's a this. It's a that. He going one way, she going the next way. Sometimes two of them going to church, but they're going different, separate ways. But when they reach in church, they're sitting next to one another, making it look like all is nice and dandy because they don't want nobody to look down on them. And a lot of times we're covering up a lot of things. Those aren't, I'm not saying not to cover it up, Don't go and air your dirty laundry, but make sure your laundry washing when you're home. Don't wear back dirty clothes. And that's what we do sometimes. We air dirty laundry because we're wearing it outside.
Yeah.
Wash it. Make sure you sort out your salvation home. Honor God with your marriage. Marriage is honorable. How many times have we heard that? Marriage is honorable. If we remove the honor from the marriage, it becomes dishonorable. It becomes dishonorable. You wouldn't have a marriage anymore. It's now dishonorable marriage. So, therefore, let's ensure that we are honoring God.
Yeah.
Where do we honor God? How we talk to each other, how we sacrifice, how husbands build that space for their wives. Because balancing marriage and ministries is a responsibility.
It is.
A big responsibility.
It is.
And for single people, if you're not up for all of that, then don't bother. Stay single. You're married and you're not doing it. It is your duty.
Yeah.
It is your duty. It's your responsibility as married people to make sure that it works. It works. Miss Joan, good evening. So you will either message me late during the evening tomorrow or Saturday morning before 8 o'clock to send you the link. So those are things. I hope this evening was helpful in us learning the balance and what really is the balance. And as we said before, that balance is not about saying, well, I give in 50-50. That balance is in obedience to God. That balance is in obedience to God. Some of us, we're more committed to church activity than we are to our marriage and spouses. You're up early in the morning for prayer meeting, 4 or 5 o'clock on the phone, or you're going in church late in whatever time in the night and neglecting your marriages and neglecting your parental responsibilities. A lot of the times those are the cases. And God's sitting down on his throne with his hands folded, and we ain't discerning his attitude concerning it yet. Because we're more interested in, yes, I was there for prayer meeting and I felt so good and we like the songs that we sing, and God watching you and screwing up his face because he's like, what's really going on? What's really going on? Your marriage in a mess, your children going astray, but you're in church. Yes, Sister Patsy. I'm just calling any random name. You know? I like to go to Sister Patsy. But again, those are things you want to ensure that you're taking care of. I don't want God screwing up his face at me when I go to lead worship anywhere, or I go to minister anywhere. We go to talk about marriage, and God does not turn up because I neglected what was important to God, and I expect him to turn up. I didn't show up for him in terms of what he wanted, but I want him to show up for me when I go and say I doing ministry for him. That can't work so.
Sorry.
It can't work so.
Sorry.
Make sure you cover your bases according to God's pattern first home before you go out and you do ministry anywhere. You want God to turn up? Let's look at ministry across the globe. It has changed within recent years.
It has.
It has changed. There is no sense of real, raw power and glory coming from God. Sometimes now we get happy when we get dregs. You know why that is? Because people neglecting the important things of the faith. That is why. Big evangelist ministries that we used to see before, where the power of God used to turn up. The days are very different now. We cannot say that we doing things the way that it could have been done in years gone by. It's very different times and seasons now. We have to make sure that we cover all God's bases first for him to show up, or else he'll leave us behind. Yes, and praying, Lord, we want a move of God. We want a move of God. Want a move of God? Make sure you move in the direction that he's moving. And a lot of the times, he's moving in a direction that says, fix these things home. Moses again tried to go and do these great grand things for the Lord, to go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go. But he had uncircumcised children. That was a requirement for the Lord. And God was about to kill him. Man chest started to hurt and all kind of thing. Was getting a heart attack, going on dead. If wasn't for his wife Zipporah, who circumcised the boys, fling the thing on the ground in front of him, that's when God left him alone. Because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So let's make sure our housework is done before we say we go in and do this ministry and that ministry that God called us to. Fix your mix. Yeah?
That's right.
3 minutes to the top of the hour.
So just to reiterate what we would have touched on, some points we would have touched on. One, make your expectations crystal clear between you and your spouse. Practice rest. Well, two of them that we didn't get to go into in full details, but set boundaries. Set boundaries that best serve you.
That's good.
Remember why you got married, which is to glorify God. The other one that we didn't get to go in depth with was engage in proactive planning, but we all know what that means. And the other one, the major one, learn to say no without feeling guilty. Yeah, and my encouragement to you, continue as a couple, continue to position yourselves correctly so that you can hear from God and allow him to lead you all and teach you how to balance, how to find the balance between what he has called you to do in ministry and allowing your marriage to honor him. Yeah, by the way you live, the way you treat your spouse, just the way you perform in your marriage, it will show in your ministry. And you want to make sure you can manage the two, maintain the balance between the two. Because it's all to God's honor and glory. Yeah, so that's my encouragement for you. God is there. He's closer than you think. So even when things are getting difficult, you're feeling overwhelmed, you can go to him. Go to him, spend time with him, spend time in prayer, spend time in worship. If you can't find the words to say, to pray, put on some worship songs, put on an instrumental, do something, open your Bible. And God will speak. And when he speaks to you, obey. Just obey, and the process will be easier when your focus is shifted, as I described it, as a mountain. When your focus is shifted from that mountain, your attitude towards the whole thing will be different. It will shift, and your response to it will be the way that God wants you to respond to it. So in that way, you'll get the job done. So that's my encouragement this evening.
So this is how we wrap up this evening's segment of Marriage Mentors. And we appreciate, again, the interaction. We always do. Whenever you give us feedback, you ask questions, those things always help. We know that you're listening, and it tells us that you're listening and that you're interested, and that we in some way, form or fashion, able to encourage you along in your walk of faith in whatever area of your life that it may be suitable.
And if it is you would like to get the recording of this segment or the last segment,
some of the other two segments that we did before.
Just send us a message when we're on air.
Probably tomorrow or Saturday.
You let us know and we'll send you the link. That's no problem at all. We will be here from 8 p.m. to midnight tomorrow, and then Saturday morning 6 a.m. to 8 a.m.
All right, so this is where we wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment of Marriage Mentors. And of course, we have Marriage Mentors coming up next month, the second Thursday in April. And of course, that would be the 11th and then on the 25th of April.
11th and 25th of April.
So, we have a next segment then on the 11th. No worry, we'll remember in advance this time. When they're catching me. So, when they're catching me, so Neoms, don't worry. The teachers will remember. So on the 11th and then on the 25th, those are the dates for Marriage Mentors in April. So thank you again for joining us, and we say ciao for now.
Love you much. Ladies, gentlemen, are you single, engaged, or married? Then we have something just for you. Join us every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. for Marriage Mentors, hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Mahon, only on Sky 99.5 FM. Let's talk love, intimacy, and just about everything under the sky regarding relationships. Marriage Mentors, every second and fourth Thursday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. only on Sky 99.5 FM.
Love and marriage, love and marriage.